Welcome back to our second episode of our real estate investing series, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Our goal is to talk about all the good things and some of the challenges that people face during their real estate investing process, and today's no different. Today, I'd like to talk with Brian about being able to make sure that you have your real estate properties priced appropriately, so you're maximizing your return on investment and the dollars that are coming in. Brian, talk to us about some of the challenges or some of the important things when we're talking about pricing of your property.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of investors, well, first of all, they just kind of throw a price out there. I see more throwing prices out there than I've ever seen. There are some places to get some good information on how to value a rental property. Again, this is one of the benefits of using a management company. They've got all the things in place to do this. But when you're valuing a property, it's going to be based on, the main thing it's based on is how many bedrooms and bathrooms it has. And then it's going to be according to its locale, its location. But, there are plenty of places to go to get values of these properties. But the biggest challenge, again, to go back, is when investors get into this game, they automatically just assume, hey, the rent value is going to be this. It's really imperative to know that rent value right off the bat, even before you purchase this property, because that's where you're going to be able to tell if you're going to be able to make a cash flow income off of this property or not. So having those contacts like the property management company will be able to do that for you.
Absolutely. And then when you're looking at these, people talk about price, the first thing they think of is, okay, I'm renting my property for less than what it should be. Well, that is absolutely a fact, and people lose money month over month, and in that arena where they are say their property is priced at $1,000 a month, where it really needs to be at $1,150. Well, that $150 is not a huge spread. When you compound it over 12, 24, 36 months, it's a big hit to your investment portfolio. Talk to us about some of the experiences with that and how a management company has helped you kind of go in and fix those items.
Yeah, all right, so it goes back to whenever you go to a tenant and increase their rent, it's a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to go to somebody that you have a relationship with now and go, hey, you're going to have to pay me more to live here. I'll give you an example. A property with an investor. He had it for 25 years. Same family, had lived there for about 19. It was renting for well under market value, probably about 50% of market value. I said, what in the world? Why? I mean, well, I just couldn't go up on rent on this. They've been with me for so long. That's missed opportunity. That is missed opportunity of being able to capitalize on that property. At the end of the day, that's what you're doing this for. This is an investment for you, and that's what you're doing it for. So yeah, those are some of the challenges that we see. Investors that basically manage their own property, number one, they're not keeping up with the rate of increase or decrease of rents in the area. And then therefore they can't, appropriately have these conversations with the tenants.
Sure, and also I also see this a lot of times, people that are self-managing their properties, they're emotionally tied to their tenants. They've seen their kids grow up. They've known the problems that the families face, health and sicknesses, and those are things. While it's important to have those relationships, however, it does prohibit them from really growing their portfolio and making sure they're staying on top of their investment things, because they see, they're only looking at this from the perspective of the other side. They can't even take their self into consideration because they're always wanting to do good for someone else. And that's great, but it also limits their investment ability. that's just that's talking about the pricing just from the perspective of underpricing. There's also problems with investors that overprice their properties because, as we've talked about previously, one of the biggest expenses with an investment property is vacancy time. So a property that sits on the market, if a property sits vacant for 2 months, those are 2 months on rent you will never be able to get back. If it's set vacant for 6 months, those 6 months you'll never be able to get that money back. So talk to us about how making sure the not just priced high enough, but appropriately to benefit your investment.
Yeah, I'd say if I was analyzing the investment, I would put a rent in a range. That way you have more comfortability to go back and forth from that standpoint. Because like any other market out there, you're going to see ups and downs in the investment market, specifically the rental real estate market. There's going to be times when it's going to decrease. There's going to be times when it's going to increase. Right now, we're dealing with a time of increase. But when it does decrease, what you're having to do when you have vacancy, you're going to have to price it appropriately for that standpoint. So if you build in your range when you're analyzing, you can do that. Again, going back to the initial analysis of if you're finding a property and trying to analyze, is this going to bring me money? You don't want to overestimate that rent price because that's going to affect your return on investment if it's lower than that.
Sure, and for those investors that are not familiar with the markets they're investing in, because there's a lot of out-of-state and even out-of-country investors. We all know that a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on this side of the street and a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on that side of the street could literally rent for 20% difference in market value based on a lot of different factors, and you need to know that. And it's without market knowledge and without the expertise that a professional management company brings, you're not going to be able to know the difference, and thus make possibly bad purchase decisions. Based on the purchase price versus the amount of cash flow that you're looking to bring in.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. I think real estate agents in general do a good job of knowing that rent value, but that's not their expertise. So having that property management relationship already built in, they're going to be able to tell you, kind of give you a better idea, what's this property going to rent for?
Sure. So the property management company and your team there is going to help you on the rent price. Whereas, the other side of this is the appreciation. Your real estate agent is really going to have that dialed in of what that property values and the appreciation rates are going down there. So it's important to have both sides.
Absolutely.
So talk to us about some other challenges that an investor would face.
Probably one of the largest challenges would be putting the right tenants in place. Again, back to vacancy. If you don't put the right tenants in place, then you've got issues of not collecting rent. You have issues of people staying in there, and then you have to go through the eviction process. I mean, having the right people in place is absolutely imperative.
Absolutely. So, one of the big things that we notice at Realty Consultants is that when we bring on a self-managed new investor client, the in-depthness of their tenant qualifying process is either non-existent or really, really low. For example, I've had folks that literally will pass off keys with a handshake, and just signing a lease, to the extent of they may ask for paycheck stubs. That is like not even barely, at the standard of what you should be doing. So, at Realty Consultants, one of the things we have, one of the things that we attune ourselves to is not just making sure it's a very thorough process, but it's a very fair process. We put every single tenant through the exact same process when we qualify them. The first thing that we do is we look at their rental income, or their the income that they're making, and we have a requirement that they have to make 3 times the amount of money on a monthly basis that their house is going to rent for. And, we took it to another extreme. We've said 3 times their net. So their paycheck that they bring in after taxes, after whatever is coming out, health insurance, after everything is paid for, they have to bring home 3 times the monthly rent. It's a very conservative thing, but we feel that it's very important because if they have that stable income, it's a more apt for a good quality tenant, especially on the financing side. The next piece is we when they give us their income, we not only make sure the numbers match, we make sure that they actually still work there. So we're going to third party look, and we're going to call their employer and make sure they're still employed there. It's just not made up numbers. We do a 50-state criminal background check. It's important to know who's putting in your property, the person's there. And, we go through that process. We also do a credit check. We do a credit check on every single person that comes in. Anybody over the age of 18 goes through these same processes. And then we also, we do a 50-state eviction check. So we check every state in the United States to see if they've been evicted, and we see if they owe money to another landlord. Because if someone has recently gone through an eviction, or they still owe a landlord money, the likelihood of them doing that with your property is very high. It's much higher. And so a lot of those things that we do, it eliminates a large number of potential prospects, but it also eliminates a large number of potential problems with your property. And so we feel it's just very, very important. And it's the first step in the line of defense of making sure your property is being protected.
Yeah, and I want to go back to one thing you hit on, and especially for the new investors out there, the fairness of the process, and to make sure you have a system in place that is exactly the same way for every person is imperative, because that's where you can get into a lot of trouble. Fair housing comes down into play from that standpoint.
Absolutely. And we all know fair housing is not a real estate agent or a licensee thing. It is a universal thing. Whether you are licensed or not, you have to adhere to fair housing standards. And you can get yourself into a lot of trouble if don't have your processes in place. And a lot of times, let's just be honest, you may think you're doing the right thing. You may think you've got all the processes lined up, but you could be inadvertently violating fair housing standards unless you know exactly what you're doing.
So, we talked about sometimes you're going to have issues. Sometimes life's going to happen, and you're going to have to go through the uncomfortable process of eviction. We see a lot of investors come to us during this process because it's such an arduous process that, hey, I've done everything on my own. I don't want to have to deal with this. Can you guys help me out with that? And Mark, talk a little bit about our the eviction process.
So basically what we try to do is make it as easy as possible on all parties, not just the tenant that's there, but also the landlord. And as you said, one of the hardest things to do is to go through that process. The technical knowledge of the right forms to file, who to write the checks to, where to take stuff, because it's not just you take it, you file it, and you move on. There's a lot of processes. And so what we've done is we've got that taken care of for you. On the initial outset, we as an organization will handle with our staff the filing of those evictions if necessary. And then if needed, if it becomes a little bit more complex, we've got attorneys and counsel there to help us along the way if things get complicated. But yeah, those are, we don't like to go down that road. It's a very, in our business, it's a very, very small percentage of the folks that have to go through that. But it's a very necessary if you get to that point to be able to have those processes in line and you're not trying to create it as you go. So yeah.